He was 16 years old when they burned his city. They killed his family, destroyed his temple, marched him 800 miles in chains. And then they asked him to run the empire. This is the story of how a prisoner became the most powerful man in Babylon, and why the king who owned him ended up eating grass like an animal. Daniel wasn't just a boy. He was royalty, descended from King David, trained in the palace of Jerusalem since he was 12. He spoke Hebrew, Aramaic, and ancient Sumerian. He knew the Torah by heart. He was being groomed to serve in the Temple of Solomon, the most sacred place on earth. He was 16, brilliant, devout, and completely unprepared for what came next. In 605 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem. The siege lasted 3 years. 3 years of starvation, of watching neighbors eat their own children, of waiting for death. When the walls finally fell, Nebuchadnezzar didn't just conquer, he erased. He burned the temple, destroyed the palace, killed the king's sons in front of their father, and gouged out the father's eyes so the last thing he ever saw was his dead children. But Nebuchadnezzar was smart. He didn't kill everyone. He took the best, the brightest, the most beautiful, and marched them 800 miles to Babylon to serve the empire that destroyed them. Imagine Daniel, 16 years old, walking through the desert in chains. 800 miles, 3 months, watching the old and weak die beside him, stepping over their bodies, eating scraps thrown by soldiers. He was a prince of Jerusalem. Now he was property. But somewhere on that march, something happened to Daniel, something that would change the course of empires. He decided he wouldn't break. Babylon wasn't just a city, it was a monument to human arrogance. Walls 60 miles long, the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a ziggurat so high it seemed to touch heaven, and everywhere, gold, idols, temples to false gods. Daniel was taken to the palace, stripped of his Hebrew name, given a Babylonian one, Belteshazzar, protector of the king's life. They gave him Babylonian clothes, Babylonian food, Babylonian education, and then they made him an offer that would test everything he believed. The king's food, the finest in the empire, meat from animals sacrificed to idols, wine poured in offering to false gods. To eat it was to honor those gods. To survive, Daniel had to betray everything his parents died for. The eunuch smiled. Eat, drink, become one of us. Daniel looked at the food, remembered the temple burning, his father's body in the street, the chains on his wrists, and said, no. The king's food, the finest in the empire, meat from animals sacrificed to idols, wine poured in offering to false gods. To eat it was to honor those gods. To survive, Daniel had to betray everything his parents died for. The eunuch smiled. Eat, drink, become one of us. Daniel looked at the food, remembered the temple burning, his father's body in the street, the chains on his wrists, and said, no. 3 years later, Nebuchadnezzar tested every student in the palace. Politics, war strategy, mathematics, astronomy, philosophy. Hundreds of Babylon's finest minds, trained by the empire's best teachers. And Daniel, the Hebrew slave, the temple orphan, the boy who refused the king's food, scored higher than all of them. The king was stunned. He asked Daniel's teachers, how is this possible? They had no answer, because Daniel's wisdom didn't come from Babylon, it came from somewhere else. Nebuchadnezzar made Daniel his chief advisor, his personal dream interpreter, his most trusted counselor. The Bible says Daniel was 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the kingdom. But here's what the Bible doesn't say, what no one talks about. Daniel was still a prisoner, still wearing Babylon's clothes, still serving the man who burned his home. And the king who promoted him was about to lose his mind. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, a statue of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, destroyed by a single rock. He called every magician in Babylon, every astrologer, every sorcerer, and gave them an impossible command. Tell me my dream, or I'll cut you into pieces and burn your homes. They begged, "Tell us the dream and we'll interpret it." But the king refused. "If you're real wise men, you'll know what I dreamed." The magicians panicked. They knew they were frauds, and Nebuchadnezzar ordered their execution. That's when Daniel stepped forward and asked for time. Daniel prayed all night, and in the morning he stood before the most powerful man on earth and said, "You dreamed of a statue, gold head, silver chest, bronze belly, iron legs, clay feet." Nebuchadnezzar's face went white. No one knew his dream, but this Hebrew slave described it perfectly. Then Daniel said, "The gold is you, King of Kings, but after you, another kingdom will rise, then another, and finally, a rock, not made by human hands, will destroy them all, and that kingdom will never end." Nebuchadnezzar fell to his knees. He didn't just believe Daniel, he worshipped him. The furnace was so hot, the soldiers who threw them in died instantly. But Nebuchadnezzar looked inside and saw 4 men walking in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and the fourth looked like a son of the gods. He called them out. Their clothes weren't burned, their hair wasn't singed, they didn't even smell like smoke. Nebuchadnezzar made a new decree. No one may speak against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, for no other God can save like this. Years passed. Daniel grew older, wiser, more powerful. And one day, he had to deliver a message to the king who had promoted him, a message no one wanted to hear. "King Nebuchadnezzar, your pride will destroy you. You look at Babylon and say, 'Is this not the great Babylon I have built?' But you forget, you are not God, and God will humble you." Nebuchadnezzar laughed. He was the King of Kings, the builder of wonders, the ruler of the world. 12 months later, God spoke. A voice from heaven said, "King Nebuchadnezzar, your kingdom has been taken from you. You will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like cattle. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms." And immediately his mind broke. His body changed. Hair grew like feathers, nails like claws. He fell to the ground and crawled on all 4s. For 7 years, the king of the world ate grass in the field, slept in the rain, was chased by dogs, became unrecognizable. And Daniel, the man who had warned him, he watched, he waited, he prayed. 7 years. 7 years of madness, of eating grass, of being less than human. And then, one morning, Nebuchadnezzar looked up at the sky, and for the first time in 7 years, he spoke with clarity. "I praise the King of Heaven. His dominion is an eternal dominion. He humbles those who walk in pride." His mind returned. His throne was restored, but he was not the same man. The king who built Babylon had been rebuilt himself. Daniel lived to see 4 empires rise and fall. He saw visions of the end of time, of a son of man coming with the clouds, of a kingdom that would never end. Babylon fell to Persia. Persia fell to Greece. Greece fell to Rome. But Daniel? He outlived them all, because his kingdom was not of this world. Years later, under a new empire, Persia, Daniel was still serving, still advising, still praying. But other officials were jealous. They searched his life for scandal, for corruption, for anything to destroy him. They found nothing. For decades, Daniel had been faithful, honest, beyond reproach. So they created a law. For 30 days, pray only to the king. Anyone who prays to another god will be thrown to the lions. They knew Daniel's habit. Every morning, he opened his window toward Jerusalem and prayed. They arrested him. The king was devastated. Daniel was his friend, but the law of the Medes and Persians could not be changed. They threw him into a pit of hungry lions, sealed it with a stone, and the king spent the night fasting, unable to sleep. Inside the den, Daniel didn't fight, didn't scream. He prayed while lions circled him in the dark. At dawn, the king ran to the den. His voice broke. "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve been able to rescue you?" And from the darkness, Daniel's voice came back. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me. Daniel died in his 90s, blind from visions, but at peace. He wrote, "Many who sleep in the dust will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." Daniel started as a prisoner, ended as a prophet. He served 4 kings, survived 3 empires, and changed the world without ever compromising who he was. But here's the painful truth. We all face a Babylon. A system that demands we compromise, a culture that rewards conformity, a pressure to become someone we're not. Daniel refused the king's food, refused to bow, refused to stop praying, and because he refused, he outlasted every king who tried to break him. Nebuchadnezzar had everything and lost his mind. Daniel had nothing and changed the world. They can take your name, your home, your freedom, but they can never take your character. Choose who you are before Babylon chooses for you.